module on moving average method of forecasting prepared by Professor Amit Dada, School of Business, George Mason University. In this module, we'll look at the moving average approach to forecasting. So again, let's put ourselves in a situation where we're trying to forecast sales demands in a marketing application, let's say. So in columns A and B, you have the weeks listed as well as the actual sales. And on the chart on the right hand side, you can see these sales drawn out for you. The basic idea in moving average is, let's say you are in a current period and you want to forecast sales for the next period. The idea is to take the current period's demand and to look back a few periods and then take the average of those. The duration of how many periods you look back is known as the window. So let's say we use a window that's 3 periods long, and let's say I am in period 3. So then if you look at the chart, you see that little bar at the bottom that goes from period 1 to period 3. So let's say I am in period 3 and I want to make a forecast for period 4. So I look at the demand for period 3, for period 2, for period 1, and I take the average of these three. And that's my forecast for period 4. So and then what do I do after I make the forecast? I simply slide the window over one period. Okay. So next time when I want to make a forecast for period 5, I would be in period 4 and I would take the average of the actual demand in periods 2, 3 and 4. That would be my forecast for period 5. And once again, I would slide the window forward one period to do the period forecast for period 6. Okay, so that's why it's called a moving average. You slide the window over. Sometimes it's also called a sliding window method. So basically, you slide the window forward. And the idea is that you want to be able to react to certain trends that are occurring in the data, but also not be hair trigger in making your forecast. And that's why you take an average of a certain window. With a window of a certain length. And I think intuitively you can guess the longer the window, the more damping you will experience. Meaning you'll be less sensitive to variations in the data the longer the window that you use for averaging. Okay, so with that basic concept, let's see how one would numerically go about doing this. So we'll start off with a window of length 2. And that's why you see in column C, the heading is F-W2, meaning I'm making a forecast with a window of size 2. Hence, the first period for which I could possibly make a forecast is period 3. And so my forecast for period 3 would be the average of the demand in period 1 and 2. Okay, so this is the forecast I would make at the end of period 2. So I'm in period 2, I want to make a forecast for period 3. And it is the average of period 1 and period 2's actual demand. So here we go. That's the forecast for period 2. Similarly, the forecast for period 4 would be the average of the actual demand in periods 2 and 3. Okay, so we have a window of size 2. And if I copy this formula down, I have my forecast all the way down to period 13. So when I'm in the last period, period 12 in this example, I would make a forecast for period 13. So this is the moving average method of forecasting. The idea is extremely simple, and you want to achieve some kind of balance between reacting to trends that are occurring in the data, but at the same time not being too hair trigger about it. All right, very well then. Let's try forecast with a window of size 3. So the first period for which I could possibly make a forecast is period 4, and the forecast would be average of the first 3 periods. That's my forecast for period 4, and I would copy the formula down, and here I have my forecasts all the way up to period 13. And just for good measure, let's do a forecast with a window that's 4 periods long. So the first period for which I would make a forecast is period 5, and that would be the average of the first 4 periods of the month. All right, so then I copy this formula down and I have my forecasts for these different periods. Okay, so I think I mentioned a few minutes ago that in general, intuitively, you can guess that the longer the window, the more damped the forecasts would be, the less reactive, less reaction you would have in the forecast to fluctuations in the data. And I've actually plotted these three forecasts for you in this chart. So you can see that in this diagram, the blue line is the actual sales. And then you have the brown line, which is the forecast with a 2-period window, the green line, which is the forecast for a 3-period window, and the violet line, which is the forecast for a 4-period window. And as you can see from the pattern, the violet line is much more damped than the brown line, which is what you would expect. The longer the window, the more damping that you get. Okay, so that's the basic pattern you would expect. Now, if you had a very long time series, it's thousands of periods long, you have, let's say, 10 years worth of data, this kind of calculation and doing it manually would be a pain. So let me show you how you would do this in Excel. Excel has a built-in function to do moving average. But so it's basically a built-in way of doing the manual calculations that we just did. But there's a little bit of a Excel specific idiosyncrasy that you have to be careful about. So I want to point that out to you. So you go to data and then to data analysis and you pick moving average. So where it says input range, I highlight the raw data, including the label, you see. So and I check the box which says labels in the first row. And for my first forecast, I will use an interval of size 2. Remember, the first forecast was using a window of size 2. So I put in a window of size 2. Now, the only thing you have to be careful here is in the where you specify Excel to produce the output. Now, this is just an idiosyncrasy of output. So I want, notice that I'm highlighting this particular window over here. By the way, the heading for column G, which says F-W2X, simply means forecast with a window of size 2 using Excel. Okay, so the numbers I get in this column should exactly match the values that I got in column C, what I got manually. Okay, so the only idiosyncrasy that I'm pointing out is where you tell Excel to give the output, and it is from period 2. Okay, and this is not from, you don't put the cursor in cell 1. Excuse me, in period 1. And once the output comes out, you will see the reason why. So I hit OK, and do you see that the output exactly matches that in column C? The reason you had to put your first cell in the second period, not the first, is that by default, Excel gives you a forecast for the n+1th period, meaning you have 12 periods worth of data over here, and Excel by default is going to give you a forecast for the 13th period. And hence, to make the numbers line up, you have to make sure that the cell you identify as the output is one cell below the first. It's just a bit of a nuisance and Excel's characteristic, but I can't fight that. I just have to live with that. So that's the one thing you have to be careful about. So let's do the same thing in Excel with a window of size 3. So again, I do data analysis and I pick moving average. The input range is the same. This time I give an interval of size 3, and the location of the output, once again, I have to be careful to specify the second period. So notice where I have specified the second period to be. Okay. And once again, you can see the output matches exactly the same output that we got in column D. Okay. And that's what it should be. As before, since we're using a window of size 3, the first period for which we can get a forecast is period 4. So let me complete this exercise by doing a 4-period window in Excel. So I go from data to data analysis, pick moving average, and I have everything the same as before, except the interval will be of size 4, and the output range will be specified once again to be period 2. Okay, so here we go, the output. So I want you to see that the output matches. I did the calculations manually just to show you the basis for these numbers. But then, for real time series, you will not have to have these calculations done manually, but you will use the built-in function in Excel, which is called moving average. The one thing you have to be careful about is where you tell Excel to put the output, to start putting the output. Okay, so this is what moving average is about. The technique is a very simple-minded one. It's to use a window of a certain size and to keep sliding the window forward as you move forward in time to make the forecast for the next period, the period next to the window.